You've probably seen some demonstrations before about static electricity. This is something that elementary school children like to do. And everybody seems to think that they can understand it until you get a kind of eccentric professor that starts to come along and ask you questions about it. Now, although I'm filming this lecture in Singapore, I have to confess that the next video was filmed overseas in a much drier climate. It's just too wet here in Singapore to demonstrate static electricity. All right, so what I have here are two helium balloons, a glass rod, and a piece of wool, and we're going to do an experiment here in electrostatics. So these balloons are filled with helium, and you'll notice that if I pass the glass rod near the balloon, nothing really happens. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to charge up these balloons by rubbing them with wool. And I can really hear the crackling, so we've got that balloon charged up. And I'll charge the second one. All right, and I can also really hear that that's charged up. And you notice that now the balloons repel one another, and that's because the balloons are charged up the same way. So we have a certain kind of electricity associated with the balloons. You'll notice also the balloon is now attracted to me, it's also attracted to this wool cloth that I used to charge it. So what we can conclude is that there are two different kinds of electricity. There's the kind of electricity associated with me and the wool cloth, and there is a kind of electricity associated with the two balloons. I also have a glass rod here, and if I rub the glass rod with the cloth, then I can use the glass rod, which would also draw the balloons away. So we have, again, two different kinds of electricity, and we can conclude also that the kind of electricity associated with each balloon is repulsive, and the kind of electricity associated with the glass rod attracts that of the balloons. One of the questions I could ask might be, how can a rubber balloon participate in electrification? How can we electrify a balloon when it's not a conductor of electricity? Neither wool nor rubber are conductors of electricity, but since ancient times, people have known about this type of electricity. I think this is a really nice painting. The original painting was in color, but it's a bit expensive for us to get the rights, so I'm showing you the black and white version. Now, I'll introduce you to the fellow up here, William Gilbert, the man who's the subject of the painting. He's showing his electrical apparatus to Queen Elizabeth. Now, this is Queen Elizabeth I, not the second, because William Gilbert lived during the late 1500s, a period of time when people were still investigating electricity and magnetism. Of course, people had known since the Middle Ages and even since ancient times that electricity existed. It was not really a new phenomenon. People knew for a long time that when you rubbed amber with fur or rubber with wool, you could generate little sparks. And incidentally, the word for amber in Greek is electron, and that's where we get the word electricity. So the word electricity comes from the Greek word for amber because amber was known for making static electricity. Now, this painting wasn't contemporary to William Gilbert. It was a reimagining of the situation and was painted around 2 centuries later after the event. But I like it anyway. William Gilbert is famous because he wrote 6 volumes on the lodestone and magnetic bodies and on the great magnet, the Earth. He wrote 6 volumes about natural magnets, or rocks, and it was kind of amazing that there would really be 6 volumes of text that one could even have to say about such things. Now, all of these old books are in the public domain, and it's kind of interesting to look at them. You know, what could he possibly have written in those 6 volumes in the late 1500s when they didn't really know anything about the physical basis of electricity or magnetism? The table of contents of his book is interesting to read. What iron is, what its matter, its use, in what countries and regions iron is produced, iron ore attracts iron ore, of the construction of the common mariner's compass and of the different compasses of various nations, Observations made by seamen commonly vary and are untrustworthy, partly through mistakes and want of knowledge and the imperfectness of the instruments, and partly because the sea is seldom so calm that shadows or lights may rest on the instruments. Sailors were clearly thought to be untrustworthy, but to their credit, it must be rather difficult to use a compass on a ship, which shakes around a lot. Gilbert wrote several pages about oblong and round magnets and how to go about finding a good magnetic stone or lodestone. And although the majority of the books are really very informative and worth reading, some of the topics in Volume 1 are a bit interesting. Of other properties of the lodestone and of its medicinal virtue, Gilbert was credited with bringing a kind of scientific inquiry to magnetics. This was roughly during the period of the Enlightenment, or at least the beginning of it, where people started to look at these things very seriously. What we can conclude from the balloon experiment is that there are two different kinds of electricity. Let's call the two kinds of electricity Wool electricity and balloon electricity. When electricity is charged, balloon electricity repels balloon electricity, but is attracted to Wool electricity. You might recall that the balloons in the video were attracted to a glass rod. So I can conclude that the electricity of the glass rod is somehow similar to the Wool electricity, as both attracted the electrified balloon. So Benjamin Franklin was the one responsible for our naming convention. He decided in a rather arbitrary way that the glass or wool electricity was going to be called positive and the rubber or balloon electricity was going to be called negative. And it's to our great misfortune that he didn't pick the other way, because it turns out that the electrons are negatively charged and they carry the current which is responsible for objects being charged or not. But now we're stuck with the system, and all engineers now must remember that current flows opposite to the direction that the electrons flow. But it wasn't his fault, and he could not have possibly known that the charge carriers in objects were negative. So, where does static electricity come from? People have known about it for quite a long time, and in the 1600s and 1700s, electricity still wasn't really useful for anything, but people started to think that it was very interesting. And they developed very large static electricity machines where you could accumulate quite a lot of charge difference through friction or rubbing objects together in smart ways. People took these static electricity machines around to carnival-type shows, and people were delighted by them. This is one of the more interesting demonstrations. There's a man on the left of that woodcut diagram showing a crank, and that crank would generate a charge difference due to static electricity, and the lady standing on a little platform that insulates her from the ground, so she would be attached to one of the terminals of the static electricity generator. Basically, it's a friction machine that rubs and rubs and rubs and rubs as he turns the crank. They would call on a gentleman from the audience and then say, "Who would like to come up and kiss the beautiful girl on the platform?" So then a man would volunteer, he would go up, and naturally, he would be grounded because his feet are touching the floor without an insulating platform. The lady, however, has been charged up. So when he touches his lips to hers, there would be a bit of a spark as she discharges her charged body through the gentleman's lips to the ground beneath his feet. The man highlighted in this woodcut image here, Georg Matthias Bose, was one of the more famous showmen at the time known for this sort of thing. By the way, if you've ever heard the name Bose before in a scientific context, there's another very famous fellow called Bose, as in Bose-Einstein condensate, but it's a different man. I suppose Bose is a relatively common name. I like this picture a lot here because I asked this question just a moment ago: how can an insulator participate in something that's electrical? So if you look at this little boy, his hair is obviously an insulator because hair doesn't normally conduct electricity. The plastic slipper slide is also obviously a very good insulator. So what's happening here as the boy slides down the slide? Why is it that his hair can stand up like that? And what's really happening here? There are electrons that were in the boy's hair. They've been transferred to the slipper slide through his body, and the human body is actually quite a good conductor of electricity, unlike hair. Distilled water, on the other hand, is a very poor conductor of electricity. It's because we have all of these electrolytes and salts in our body that makes us rather good conductors of electricity. So the electrons have actually gone from the boy's hair through his body and out to the surface of the slide. And the reason for this transfer of electrons has to do with the nature of the two surfaces of the materials that come into contact with one another. And the reason why static electricity works so well with insulators compared to metals is because when these excess electrons get to an insulating surface, they don't have anywhere to go, because the electrons can't move through an insulator to somehow easily leave. So the boy's hairs repel one another because they are like charged. They can't move anywhere to leave. When there's a lack of electrons on the boy's hair, it's not easy to get new electrons up through the body to replace them, because the boy's not grounded and the slide surface is trying to grab electrons rather than donate them to the boy. You know, it nearly all takes place at the surface of the materials, because electrons can't get into the materials to dissipate away when they're insulators. So unfortunately, in Singapore or any humid, hot climate, we have a lot of water molecules in the air, and this tends to dissipate charges from surfaces in a very efficient way. So static electricity experiments work very well in wintry or desert air where the air can't hold very much moisture. With static electricity, the number of electrons involved is actually really tiny. To get a charge like we're talking about here, it's something like 10 to power 13 electrons being displaced. And that may sound like a very large number, but it's actually a really small number of electrons that are able to move around on these materials. There's a whole field of study related to electrical properties of surfaces, and it's called tribology. Tribology is the study of friction, and the sequence of materials here on the left is called the triboelectric series. These materials have different types of surfaces. Some surfaces have an affinity to pick up electrons. Some of them tend to lose electrons. So if you want to rub something against something else in order to generate a good difference in charge, it's good to pick materials on opposite ends of the triboelectric series. So for example, I picked the best example I could find for the static electricity experiment earlier. I used wool and glass to attract rubber balloons. So I don't think I really could have done much better in terms of trying to do an experiment. So in this video, you've learned that there are two different types of electricity, or rather, two types of electric charges, positive and negative. It's almost always the case that electrons are responsible for movements of charges. You've also learned that static electricity is caused by charge separation resulting from friction. The reason that insulators rather than conductors are common in demonstrations of static electricity is that in insulators, charge imbalances cannot easily be equalized again because electron movement is impeded through an insulator. In the next video, we will look at a situation where the charge carriers can sometimes be positive rather than negative.